Hi, today I want to talk to you about Christianity and singleness or singlehood. And I might get a little bit deep and I might get a little bit more serious than usual, but it is important. We do need to talk about serious things. First of all, I just want to start by saying I do have an issue with some Christian ministers or pastors or speakers who always label singleness as a season or a chapter in your life. And they tell you about prayers while you're waiting for Mr. Right or Mrs. Right for your future spouse. The issue that I have with those words, waiting on my future spouse and a season or a chapter of singleness, is that as if it indirectly says you're going to be born, you're going to get married, and you're going to die. Like there is a guarantee that you will die and you will get married. It's just that we don't know when. We don't know the time or the day nor the hour. And that is actually false. And it gives false hope. And I see so many people struggle. I've been praying for years. I'm waiting. I'm tired of waiting. Discerning, doing novenas, this and that, and when is my turn gonna come? When is the one gonna come? When is? And people get tired and exhausted from waiting for the one. And simply, sometimes I just feel like saying, well, who said you are going to get the one? Who said you are destined to be married? There is nowhere in the Bible where God guarantees that every single man and woman will end up being married. Even if you don't choose religious life, even if you don't choose consecrated life, and even if you don't choose or take a vow of celibacy and a vow of celibacy, chastity, all of that, not everyone is going to get married. There's a group of people who will never get married, and being single is their unwanted, unchosen, but permanent reality. And the quicker we come to terms with that, and the quicker we actually start to think of that hang on a second, maybe marriage is not in God's plan for me, the less I believe we will struggle, because we will come to a time where we can really surrender to God's will and really finally let go of the waiting. And at the end, how could you wait for something that you don't know that's ever going to happen? What are you waiting for? If someone says to you, hey, I've written you a letter, I've posted it in the mail, you wait. But you know something's been posted in the mail, so you wait for it. When you apply for a job and it's an interview, you wait. Okay, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I should hear something. But when you have no evidence that something is going to come whatsoever, there's not even one lead that tells you, oh yeah, something is coming, something is happening, something is a possibility. All you have is people telling you, oh, in God's timing, that gives you false hope. What are you waiting for? You can't wait for something and someone who doesn't exist. You wait for things that do exist and for people who do exist. So until there is someone in your life, what are you waiting for? Thin air, literally. Okay? So first things first, we really need to come to terms that there's a possibility that singleness or singlehood is our permanent reality. The other thing is, no. What do I mean by that? When we pray, usually there's this saying that God answers every prayer, which is true, and he usually answers it with yes, yes, not now, and no. No. Sometimes God answers no. And you're not going to hear the no, and you're not going to pick up that the answer is no if you keep on waiting, because that's what people are telling you to do. Oh, wait, I'm in the waiting season. Or if you keep on thinking of singleness as a chapter or a season, because that means that it's going to come to an end and there's going to be another chapter, which is not singleness, a chapter of marriage. No, sometimes God says no. And we need to come to terms with that he does say no. He answers every prayer and he does say no sometimes. God, can I have a future spouse? No. And no means no. No doesn't mean, oh, let me pray harder. No doesn't mean, oh, let's wait a little bit longer. It might change. Oh, let me do another novena. Let me ask for another confirmation 350. No. It's sad, it's hurtful, but God does say no. God is not a genie. He's not a lamp, you rub, and he comes out. What would you like? God, I want this. Okay, my daughter, my son, I will give it to you. No, God is not a genie. Sometimes he does say no. And let that sink in, because it could be that what you are praying for or what you are asking for, God has already answered you so many times and he said no. But when there's so much noise around you, when there's people saying to you, oh, don't worry, it's all in God's timing, and oh, don't worry, singleness is a season, and it's a season to help you grow closer to God, and a season to, heal old wounds, and a season to serve the church, and blah, 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 blah. And everyone's forever in the season. Little do you know that it's not a season, it's a lifetime. So, if you're feeling a little bit down, I understand. But that is good, because it means what I've said has hit a nerve, or what I've said has done a little bit of a, oh. Then you can ponder that and think about that. And, I love people when they go, in Genesis, God, gave Adam Eve because, so everyone has someone. No, not everyone has someone. In Genesis, it literally says, God saw that Adam was alone and he thought it is not good for man to be alone. So he sent him a helper, because there's no way Adam could tend to Eden all by himself. And God was worried that Adam will become isolated and he will start to withdraw, okay? So it was for loneliness that God gave Adam Eve, and she's actually labeled as a helper. Not because Adam is helpless, but because we need community, we need relationships. We can't do everything on our own. We are made for relation. It doesn't necessarily be a girlfriend. Eve wasn't described as a girlfriend. She wasn't described as a wife. And she wasn't described, her relationship with Adam wasn't labeled romantic necessarily. Back at that time, there was no marriage. Adam and Eve did not actually have nuptials. Okay? So he needed a helper. Therefore, go out there and find helpers. Not necessarily spouses, girlfriends, or boyfriends. Build community. Because the reason why you seek a relationship, the reason why you are so desperate to find love and to have companionship is actually one of two. You are either actually lonely, which means you are physically isolated, you do not have friends, you do not have family, you have minimal contact with the outside world, or maybe you just go to work and come home and you have, just formal contact with your colleagues. In that case, of course, you will be feeling lonely, because we are made for community and we were made for relationship. You need friends, you need family, you need good nurturing relationships. So go ahead and get them. Build that around you. And don't forget, when you go through a breakup, what do? You pick up the phone and you call a friend. You pick up the phone and call a colleague. You pick up the phone and call a cousin, your mom, your sister, your brother. You actually go to people, because even if you find someone, you can't actually live without having a network around you. A spouse is not an answer and a solution to all of your life's problems, and certainly is not going to resolve your feeling of loneliness. Trust me. If you expect a spouse to actually resolve your loneliness, you're going to be disappointed. And they're going to be stressed out, because no single human being is going to manage to fulfill all of your internal needs. I'll give you an example. There was a time in my life where I was in a relationship. It was not a good relationship. On a star rating, I will give it 0 stars. But in the very beginning, when things were exciting and fresh and, the honeymoon period, I clearly remember I was so happy and elated that I finally have a boyfriend. It's been a long time, a long season of singleness. And I was actually folding clothes like a good girl. And suddenly I felt this wave of loneliness inside of me. And I wondered, I was like, why do I feel lonely? I have a boyfriend now, I'm in a relationship. Why do I feel lonely? And then I realized that loneliness doesn't have to do anything with being in a relationship or not. Married people feel lonely. Happily married people feel sometimes lonely, sometimes feel bored, sometimes feel like they're stuck in a rut. No, don't ever think that a relationship or marriage is going to resolve your loneliness. Because the second reason for loneliness. Remember, the first one is an actual physical loneliness, reality. The second one is this longing to be loved and for companionship usually comes from, generally speaking, from a deep childhood wound. And it doesn't have to be childhood. It could also be, in your adolescent, teenage years, or even as an adult. You could have had a relationship that you felt a very strong sense of rejection, and it really left a really deep wound and scar in you that started to make you wonder your worth and your value. And you started to see somehow your worth and your value in other people's love for you and in having someone. Those deep wounds, which most of them will be childhood wounds. It doesn't mean your parents were awful parents. I am sure your parents were wonderful. Most parents are doing their best really at parenting, but they're human beings, they have flaws. We all come from families. Every family is crazy in its own way. So we all carry some wounds, okay? We will all experience, knowingly or unknowingly, rejection in a way, or where we are not good enough, and where our validation comes through the eyes of somebody else. And when we have those things, we will feel lonely and we'll always long for love and companionship. And as you can see and appreciate, a human being, a husband and a wife, cannot heal those deep wounds. You are putting way too much pressure on this person if you expect that by being married, all of your wounds are going to heal. Yes, relationships do heal, but not one single person and not one single relationship. I go back, build a network, build a community, build a village. Because what will happen when you are in a relationship, and finally you feel satisfied, finally I don't feel lonely anymore, and the relationship ends. What are you going to do? You'll crash and burn, you'll be on the floor, comatose, paralyzed. What happened to me? You'll have no agency whatsoever because you've put your kind of half of your existence and half of the meaning on your life, you've attached it to a person. One person. And human beings are mortal. They come and they go. So do relationships. So, build a network. Look, I do know that this talk probably, put a damper on your mood a little bit, but I think it was really important to come to terms with singleness and singlehood and start to actually wonder to yourself, what is it about this thing that is the most neutral state to have, by the way? Being single, you were born single, you're going to die single, and on Judgment Day, you're going to be judged as a single individual. God is not going to be like, where's your spouse? I judge you together. No, it's not going to work that way. Singlehood and singleness, it is the most neutral, it's ground zero, it's the most stock standard relationship status to have. Let's start thinking of singleness or singlehood as neutral, normal. Nothing more normal, nothing more neutral than this. It is only this way that we're going to start fighting the stigma, almost a stigma of singleness. Seriously, we do have a stigma of singleness in our society. Oh my God, you're single. Oh, you must be so lonely. Oh, don't fall for that trap. It's a lie. Don't let Instagram pictures fool you. There's a lot of married people who are more lonely than someone who hasn't dated in 7 years. I assure you. Once you let go of that desire for relationship and love, there will be a grieving period because you have spent a big chunk of your life attached and waiting for this great thing that's going to happen and bring you joy and happiness and satisfaction and companionship and children and a family and a home and I don't know what. There's a grieving period because there's a disappointment, there's a shattering of dreams, okay? But this is a great opportunity for you to reflect on what does marriage mean to you, what does relationship mean to you, and what does singleness mean to you, and where on earth did you learn that being single is being sad and lonely and being married is being successful and happy and you've got it all. It's time to start to actually deconstruct those lies that our culture and society has taught us since a very young age. And it is also very important to remember that God is not a genie. He does answer no sometimes. But in order to answer no, you need to really, really, really be honest with yourself. And you need to want to hear God's voice a lot more than want your desires to be met. I leave you with this, and I hope that you think about this a little bit and you ponder on it. And I hope that you can discern whether our relationship is really for you or not. And I hope that you can find your detachment from this need to be in a relationship. And I hope that you start to find freedom and joy in being single. Thank you for watching. God bless.